I'm the eldest.
Oh, eldest, yeah.
And I've got two younger brothers.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to show my brothers that pursuing, I'm going to get emotional, pursuing your purpose and your dreams is how we should live this life. If I stuck and stayed small, I wouldn't want that for them. So I just got to lead by example.
Before we get started on today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the land of the Darug people. We would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our elders past and present and the next generation coming through. Now, onto today's episode. We're joined by Jen Trinh, an expat living and teaching in Bangkok. Jen grew up in southwest Sydney, but has spent the last decade travelling, teaching abroad, exploring sunsets and making connections with people from all over the world. She's back in Oz for 2 months to spend some time with her family and friends, so we sat down with her to hear more about her journey. In this episode, we talk about the concept of being a third culture kid, the experience of reverse culture shock in Bangkok, and how Jen has been able to break away from societal norms and Asian family expectations, especially as the eldest Asian daughter. Now, onto the episode. Welcome to the Level Asian podcast, Jen. We're going to get into it, right?
I want to start. So,
okay, you go.
So just for preface, Jen and Davey and I, we know each other through, obviously, long time ago, high school. We did a PCYC leadership camp together. That's how we sort of know each other as well. The reason why I brought Jen on the show, or the reason why we brought Jen on the show, is primarily because you spent the last, God knows how long, probably 5 years, you'd say, in Bangkok. Is that how long it's been?
Yeah, but just out of Australia, I think it's been 7-8 years now.
Yeah, crazy. So
All at one time?
The first kind of lot was 2 or 3 years, and then I came back 2017, and I've been away since 2018.
Oh my God.
Long ass time.
Far out.
So the reason why I brought Jen on, sorry, I'll say this again. The reason why we brought Jen on, I keep saying I. The reason why I brought Jen on was because I believe there's a lot of people, and Davey and I were talking about this as well, there's a lot of probably younger generation right now who are probably going through, say, high school, who have aspirations and dreams to go and travel, seek out, just explore, be free spirited about this whole thing. And it's a thing that people, for some reason, I feel like they're not working towards something. It's like a, hey, I'll just do this for a moment, point in time before I'll get it out of my system and then I'll sort of move into something else. But you've been doing it for 7 years, which is crazy. And so really interesting to explore that. But also to understand, the typical stuff we go through, which is upbringing and all that sort of stuff. So I think the first place to start would obviously to talk about your upbringing and where it started. So can you sort of walk through for everyone listening, what your life was like, I guess, in the early days, growing up?
Coming from an Asian background, I've got really traditional parents, really conventional. When you grow up, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an accountant or a lawyer, something that's reputable and makes a lot of money, basically. And I guess that was the first hurdle that I probably fell at, because I ended up becoming a teacher and I wanted to give back to the community in that way, because I had really impressionable teachers that made a huge influence on me. And I think part of me, Asian culture, all of that sort of stuff, but the other side came from my teachers, and so that's where it all started. And and I even in high school, I kind of knew I wanted to break whatever boundaries that my parents had set for me, and I knew in doing that it was really, in their eyes, rebellious. I was going against the grain, and as a result I think internally I felt like I was disappointing them, or failing them, or not kind of appreciating all the hard work that they put in, and in turn I've kind of followed my own path instead of paying them back. In that kind of way. And I think you guys might resonate with that. It's really strong 100%. In Asian culture. And it's always even now at the age of 32, I feel really conflicted by that all the time. And it's a challenge to kind of step out of that, step above that kind of thing, and really, just break away from that and be okay with it.
Do your parents want you to be something particularly?
I mean, maybe they don't say it kind of outspokenly, but maybe it's me. It's us assuming they they want us to be a certain way and our perceptions of that.
Oh, so they've never said it like it's...
No, not at all. And my parents are super supportive. Probably I didn't see that growing up. I was really resentful of like, you're so strict. You know, you don't understand me. Why do we have all these rules? Like it's not cool. You know, it's inhibiting me from doing what I want. But now that I'm a lot older, we have a better rapport and relationship. I'm like, oh no, they're coming from a place of love. But the whole time, you know, I've saw it as a place of you're going against me. You're kind of like not supportive, but it's not that case at all. So yeah, and I don't know if you guys go through that. It's like a constant like.
Well, look at me. I'm like the prize child.
Golden boy.
Golden boy.
What everyone says. So I think it's like literally I followed the path that exactly what my parents told me to do. So my parents actually, same thing, but my parents never told me to do it. I just did it because I felt the pressure. And it was weird because like I'd never actually been told, hey, you should do accounting or you should go to uni. I just felt the pressure from everywhere. Yeah, maybe it was the aunties. I don't know. Sometimes it's like always the...
Yeah, it could be. It's always like
the aunties or the uncles that say stuff or... You know, it's just weird. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just our culture that we feel that way.
It's also friends as well. Like you go to school and like a lot of these guys, they want to go into corporate. They want to like, you know, they want to do like the Asian degrees like commerce.
Yeah.
You know, everyone wants to do
Business, commerce, law-ish kind of.
Some medical school,
Yeah.
but for the most part, you know, that was like the most, like I very rarely do I see anyone going to like physio or like something that's a little bit different, you know. There were a few, but like I know a few now.
Or like a philosopher or something.
Yeah, like something really esoteric, like something different like
like
that.
arts or something like that.
Yeah.
You said you had very impressionable teachers. Does that mean like at that point in time when you had really good teachers, you were like, yes, I want to be a school teacher?
Yeah, like I was like, oh wow, they sparked something in me. They were able to give me like these critical thinking skills. Like I was able to question a lot of things, including myself and my culture and our society and everything like that. And I'm like, that's such a like invaluable thing to be implanting into like a human being, like let alone like, you know, a group of students or whatever it is. And I thought, wow, that really nurtured me at that time. Right. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to do this for your, like, as a living?
Yeah.
And at the time I was doing a lot of youth work, community work as well. And I just felt drawn to kind of working and paying back, you know, this idea of pay it forward. I had this like idea, how am I going to pay it forward? And I felt like teaching was the best way within my capacity to give back to our community.
What got you so into like community work and youth work?
I don't know. Like I heard like, you know, in my younger days, like volunteer work is what's going to change your life. Like you get to see a lot of things, you get to experience a lot of things. So I was like really motivated, I think, to just like do community work for free and just like learn things and see where it takes me. And yeah, and I think it's not so much, I don't know if it's the younger generation today, if they're really into that. I feel like they're a bit more self-absorbed in that kind of way, and volunteer work is not so valued. I mean, I might be wrong, but I feel like back then it was like super like, important, and it added to your skill set. And a lot of the things I learned, like, you know, in terms of compassion and like this collectivist community feeling into what we do stem from volunteer work.
Interesting.
I feel like back then, though, this is my view of it, which is completely different from you, was that volunteer work was something that we need to put on our resume.
It was a tick off the list, right?
So, and as a result, a lot of us were doing that. But nowadays, I feel like a lot of people doing volunteer work, they don't know they feel like it's unpaid work. And like, that's kind of like what society has said now, that like you're doing unpaid work, you should be paid for what you're doing. And also some of the non-for-profits aren't really non-for-profit, if you know what I mean. Like as in, so that's why there's just a lot of stigma about volunteer work nowadays. That's what I think.
I remember like I remember doing like Red Nose Day. Yeah. And you like go around and just like sell like a box of, you know, chocolates or whatever. And you'd want to do it. Like you like in high school, you'd be like, all right, let's do Red Nose Day. And then like, I don't know, Salvo's like Red Shield Appeal, you know, stuff like that. And you'd have to wake up like early in the morning, like 5, 6 a.m. in the morning to get on the train to go to the city and like just sell stuff. But I don't know, like you're a school teacher, so you probably see this a lot.
Yeah.
You feel like there's not as much focus on that?
No, but I think it's not like Davey said, you know, back then it was like, oh, volunteer, you put on your resume.
Yeah.
And I think back then I came from the mindset, and just looking back at it now, like a service. Like came from a part of like, this is like a human service. You want to contribute in this way. So I've been like really disconnected from what's happening at the moment in like mainstream, Australian society. So I can't be like, making comment on that. Yeah.
It's changed a lot, I think. Like I don't actually see much volunteer work done at all. Like I don't see it at all. The people I speak to, the graduates or students, no one does it anymore as much. But maybe I'm in a different place as well. So
I think it's prevalent now in more high school, only because I know my siblings are a lot younger. My sister is doing a lot of volunteer work. I think it's also, I'm not going to say the school, that certain school, all of the kids are doing that. They're very like in tune with everything, very PC as well. Yeah, which is really interesting.
I remember when I went to travel for a year, a lot of people said to me, they're like, oh, Ken, like that's really brave, like to go away and like travel. At least from an Asian societal thinking perspective, it's like you don't take like a gap year off. You just roll. We were just talking about this in another podcast. Like you roll from high school into uni into work, and then you just keep going. How did you come to the decision that you want to like go travel?
Oh, it all links in because I finished school, went off to uni and then went right back into school. There was no gap in between. I rolled right back into being a high school teacher. And what I saw after 3 or 4 years of teaching, not only was I burnt out, but I was like, oh my God, what kind of life experience am I imparting on the younger generation? I'm a textbook teacher and I felt really like, and no shade to all the other teachers, but inside me, I felt like I was like an imposter. I'm like, I don't have anything to really share with them other than like all this knowledge that I've learned through books. Like it's not experiential, and that's not like what I think deep down, like what a teacher can offer in the classroom. So I was like, look, I'm going to do this for myself, but do this for my career. My career and my students as well. I'm just going to go off and experience life. See what this could bring, and then bring that back into the classroom and see if that changes my practice, my teaching practice. How does that impact how I show up in the classroom and how these kids learn in the process? And I also wanted to experience education in a different context, because this is a very like bubbled kind of especially state education here. So I kind of want to like get out there and experience the classroom context and myself in that in a different place. So
was there like a turning point or something that happened during school or were you teaching that forced you to go, oh, this is not for me, or this is something that I need to learn more on?
No, I was just burnt out and I was like, cool. And then I went on like a short summer break, like solo travel, backpacking. And then when I came back, I was like, mad. I'm just gonna like resign in 6 months and I'll see you guys later. And this will always be here when I get back.
Well, that's actually interesting, because like me and Cam were speaking to a business person that's been in business for like 20 plus years. And we said that when we travel, what exactly did we say? Like when we travel, we have like an epiphany or something. Like it just makes you think differently. Maybe because we're more relaxed and we have time to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for us, like we just have some time to sit down and just go, holy shit! Like you look at your life and you go, maybe all this stuff that we were thinking about, like it wasn't.
You question everything.
Yeah, it makes you question everything. So I think maybe that's what happened. Maybe like
perhaps. Not quite. I was like, I want to see the world because I'm teaching these different places and spaces, communities, all these world issues, and I've not even seen it. I just see it in the books, what I've read.
But like when you traveled, when you did that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
It changed me inside out and then continues to change me. I'm always discovering new parts and rediscovering parts of myself. And it really, like, for me, one of the driving factors was that, like, when you die, am I going to have regrets? Am I going to say, like, I wish I did that thing, And that, like, haunts me sometimes because I'm like, I don't want to live with like any regrets of like I should have done that. So at least like for a portion of my life, I've kind of like was able to experience doing what I wanted rather than like what the communities, parents, whatever, what I thought I needed to do, but just like absolutely be uninhibited by that. And yeah, it definitely changed me.
Because I was going to say, when I think of you, and because we've had many conversations, is like you essentially lived what was not called that at the time the YOLO life.
Yeah.
Like, you were like, I was like, Jen's living the YOLO life because
Wait, let's, for the viewers out there, like, what is the YOLO life?
you only
Yeah,
live
what
once,
does that
right?
even-
Which is like, you only live once. You don't want a life full of regrets.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck it, I'm going to do it now because if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So it's very much so like, let's not overanalyze it and let's just go try it and see what happens. Like very carefree, very free spirit about things, which is very, I wouldn't say abnormal, but it's like not common because most people, analysis paralysis, they overthink this stuff and then they never end up doing that thing, right? Because there's a lot of what if. You always like basically strike me as someone who really just didn't need to actually overthink the thing and just like move in and do it. But to do that, do you feel like there was something in particular that helped you to do that? Because most people are not like that. So what was your thinking through that process?
Yeah, thank you for that. Like when you were speaking, I was thinking, so one friend said to me this, the second time I was leaving, she looked at me and she was like another female. She had like this big mom energy and she was like, Jen, fortune favors the brave. And I was like shook when she said that. And so I was like, I just got to be brave. You know, this is scary, letting go of all these things. It's scary. There's nothing permanent. There's no security. But if I'm brave, good fortune will come to me in whatever forms it did. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to stick with that and roll with it. But touching base on what you said before, like not a lot of people like in our community, I didn't have role models. I didn't see people do this. It was just like, oh, I want to be the one that's like breaking the bamboo ceiling as you go. Like, I just want to be the first one to step out there and see what it brings. And I also intrinsically was like, you know, I've got female cousins and I see the lives that, you know, they're living and I'm like, yo, we can do better than that. Like our parents didn't go through all of this so that we can play it small. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of us in the community, my friends included, when like I come and catch up with them, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a textbook model kind of thing. I'm like, let's go big or, you know, go home. Like there's no kind of like playing it small. So yeah, but I kind of really like that you see, because I don't see myself as that in some ways, like the YOLO life, like she's doing, like, I don't have that perception of myself.
Like, to be honest, like when Can told me that you're coming on the podcast, I was like, wow, amazing for me. So look at me, like, for example, did follow the path of everyone that told me to follow, you know, did accounting, did uni, started my own business doing accounting. Everything I did was just for what society told me to do. And I just did it. And it's great, but sometimes I just go, man, I wish I just traveled. I traveled for like a couple of years. I would love to travel. I see a lot of friends coming back and they're telling me, oh my God, UK was the best thing that ever did for me. Or going to Thailand or going to Asia or going to Japan. And I'm just like, yes, it's cool.
Top stuff, mate.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like super jealous, like one thing. And I'm super admire, like you guys inspire me. And I used to think, like I used to be in my office sitting there and looking on social media and seeing everyone's pictures when they were traveling. And I would just be like, wow, these guys are living their dream. And I'm like, so amazing. I would feel jealous, but I would also, and I would get inspired. And then from that inspiration, I would actually go, you know what? I just need to kick ass at what I'm doing right now because I've got my
motivation.
Yeah, I got these goals I need to achieve. Once I achieve it, then I will travel. I will do the exact same thing. So yeah, like I find what you've done super inspirational for me. Like and I don't think you see it that way. I don't think a lot of people see it that way when they do travel. But yeah, it's really inspirational for.
Yeah, I can say like from an inspiration standpoint, like I never said this to you anyway. Like we catch up, you know, when we do. I feel like somewhat we fueled each other for a while, like at least on my side, because I was like, because you like, you know, you post on Instagram, you share like what's happening in your life, and I remember like leading up to like planning my trip when I was going traveling, I was like, damn, Jen's already doing it. I was like, I gotta catch up, you know? And it was like you're a very open person about your philosophies in terms of life. And I feel like there's a lot of, I resonate a lot because I have the same philosophy, which is like, yeah, YOLO to a certain extent, but I think there's always, like you say, like there's always going to be a job when you come back. There's always going to be something here. Because I think a lot of people think that, oh man, like if I leave now, like what's going to happen? So I got through that very quickly because I understood after a while, I was like, hey, like there's always going to be something here for me. So it was very easy for me to like make a decision to go and travel as well. I want to ask, because you've been doing it for 7 years, right? So you went traveling. You said you were like going traveling for like maybe a year or two, where you're just going around the world, and then why Bangkok?
I'll come back to that, but I just want to touch base on what Davey has said. Like, I find what you guys are doing really admirable. You know, like you've got this whole thing going on. I didn't know you were like, you know, getting all the accolades.
This is a big mental masturbation podcast right now. So.
But like, and
anyway,
even you, like, you know, you guys setting up this podcast and creating this like momentum and energy and vibe for like all of that. And I'm like, I sit back and I'm like, oh, wow. Like I'm not making that kind of impact. I know my social impact is a lot different to the way you guys are going about it, but it's equally as admirable because I don't have the security and the foundations like you guys have here. But I do know that I have like other things, and it's always like a cost benefit analysis kind of thing that we go through. But what I do want to say for everyone out there, and especially to you guys sitting here, is that, you know, we always have this mentality of like, oh, if I do this, then I'll be able to do this. Or when I do this, then I will do this. And I don't know. That always scared me because I'm like, you never know what will happen and who you will be, where you will be at that point. And maybe when you arrive at that point, it might be like not too late, but it'd be like some things will change, you know? So I think the idea of like here and now, you know, do what excites you here and now, not what you think will excite you, you know, 10 years down the track. So that's always something I'm battling with. I'm like, well, I'm just got to stay present. This is what I want now, and it's okay to pursue this. And I trust that the universe will like bring it back to me if I need it to come back. But what was your question again?
So the question was, you know, you were traveling around the world, and then it's like, well, of all places, why Bangkok? And then why did you decide to settle there and then do teaching there?
Yeah, so I was teaching in Thailand before that in 2015, and then I left Thailand, and then I did this round the world trip, and I came back 2017, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I think I'm ready. I've got all this experience. I'm going to jump back into the classroom and actually see what I've like, can I, you know, put into practice what I've learned so far. And it was amazing. That 1 year I was back, like professionally in the classroom, I had so many light bulb moments. I had made so many connections, and it was great. But then I was feeling like really dead inside. Like the person who I found when I was out there died when she came back and was in the classroom and in the community that we lived in. I felt small again. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this interview. My friend was like, hey, I've got this job at this school. How about you do the interview and see what happens? And I said to myself, look, I'll do the interview. If they offer me the job, I will take it. If they don't, then I'm going to figure something out, but I'm going to get out of the classroom. And they offered me the job, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go.
Yeah, wow.
And so Bangkok is like nothing like Sydney. You know, we're like a landmark place, right? And when I tell them, when I meet people and I say I'm from Sydney, they're like, why are you here? Like, Sydney's amazing. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Let me check you here. But you guys, Bangkok is transnational. Like, it's such a hub for Asia. I call it the New York of Asia. And like, so many things, tech, startups, like people, like the people you engage with and the people that it draws in, and culturally, so distinct, you know. And yeah, I just felt like it was, and I had a group of friends there as well, and I felt like comfortable and safe there because I'd already spent like a year and a half in Thailand, so I had a grasp of the language, the culture, so it was like an easy decision. And it was like, okay, Bangkok, from here I can go anywhere I want.
Fiji travel.
Yes, which is exactly what I did in the last 4 years. I mean, bar COVID, I just kind of like went all sorts of directions.
I remember when you did come back in 2017, one of the things, like I remember you were really passionate about it. And one of the things you said was, you're like, I went away for this amount of time and I came back and everything's the same. And I get that feeling when I come back from Sydney as well.
Yeah.
I took a year away, or even when I went traveling for at least a month or two. And I don't know if you guys get this as well. I come back and I'm like, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Like Sydney's exactly the same. Like, it's in a time warp.
Exactly. Like you leave Sydney and you realize how good everything else is. And then when you come back, you're like, oh, everything's the same. But then you just fit right back.
You know what's weird, bro? I come back and I go, fuck, Sydney is an amazing place.
It's not a negative thing. Like it's an observation because like Sydney hasn't, like I remember coming back and I had reverse culture shock, right? And I was like, the first thing I remember was like, waking up in an Airbnb because there's COVID hit and I was like isolating, right? The freaking really like annoying birds in the morning that wake you up. And I was like, I didn't experience this for a year. I don't know if you got this when you came back, but that was the first thing I noticed. But I appreciate a lot of things about Sydney, which was like how much space you had.
Yeah.
Wow.
Clean
like
water.
going overseas, you just, yeah, exactly. Like how much space you have, how clean everything is. I remember coming back and I was like, I felt to myself, I was like, oh, I'm actually very glad I call Sydney home because Australia in general, because we've, you call us a lucky country. We are actually very lucky here, right? Just with everything that we've got here. But then from how progressive things are, meaning like technology and like how like trends and like if you're someone who's ambitious who wants like go, I like people say Sydney's busy, but Sydney's not busy compared to like the rest of the world. Like you probably get that in Bangkok.
Like
and
the
elsewhere,
experiences in Sydney probably not as great as like definitely Bangkok or New York or like UK, but definitely I find that the standard of living is quite high.
Yes.
The weather is amazing. The people are amazing. Like
Safe.
it's safe. Yeah, I can I can walk around with like money in my pocket and no doubt I'm not going to get robbed. But when you go into another country, like I was running around in America. I went to America and I went for a run around this area. Forgot the place, but there was literally like no other person apart from dark-skinned people. And then when I was running around, everyone was looking at me. I didn't know what was going on. And then I find out later on that I shouldn't be running around that place at all.
You're running around the ghetto or something.
It was a ghetto area at all. And everyone was looking at me and it was weird. And then I think my next door neighbor told me, he was a black man, and he said to me, hey, you shouldn't be running around this place. Like he firstly befriended me first and asked me, what are you doing here and stuff. Just told him I was on a holiday, and then he told me later, hey, just let you know, like you shouldn't be running around at this place at all. And I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even know.
Ignorance is bliss.
But I guess to go back to the point, it's like, like I felt the same when I went to Bangkok. Like Bangkok was one of those very like, like sounds cliche, I'm like a very vibrant city, but it was very progressive, like in terms of certain things. There's also different parts of it that are just like stuck in a time warp as well. But I did find it a very livable city. Like I actually lived there for like 2 months. This was just before COVID hit.
Yeah, we met up. I know
that's where we caught up, right? And so
that was the last time.
That was the last time we saw each other. And I actually thought to myself, I was like, I would actually live in Bangkok, right? Like I would actually consider living in Bangkok. I remember when we were chatting leading up to the podcast, you said something about third culture kid. And I was like, I was like, I don't know what the third culture kid was. So can you like elaborate on what that is? And, pretty much like what is third culture kid?
For sure. But I want to pay tribute just for a second here to the nature that we have in Sydney. Like since being back, nature is so accessible. I live in a concrete jungle in Bangkok, and like you have to go hours out to hit the beach, to hit the mountains. Like here, you walk to the park. Yeah. And you're good, man. You get your nature fix. You recharge really quickly. Yeah. Or you just drive half an hour and you're at the beach. So I've really appreciated that and really grateful for that since being back. But yeah, third culture kid, the first made me feel like I was like, wasn't cultured for not knowing that, actually, funnily enough. Bangkok is, predominantly Asian. And when you meet expats, they're from everywhere, Germany, France, like, everywhere, right? And they're like, oh, so the first question is, are you Thai? Because obviously I'm Asian. I'm like, no, I'm not Thai. And you can hear from my accent, I'm from somewhere different. And they'll be like, oh, so where are you from? And then I'm like, oh, I'm from Australia. And they're like, what do you mean? Where are you really from? Right? And then I'll be like, no, I'm from Australia, but my background is Vietnamese and Chinese. And someone said to me, oh, so you're a third culture kid. And I was like, is that racist? Like, I feel like that's a racial... Like,
was that the expats who called you third culture kid, or the actual Thais who called you third culture?
Both, but the expats too, because like they were there long enough to like, because I mean, they meet people like, with many different cultures as well. So they're like, oh yeah, you're a third culture kid. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
how dare you?
I thought it was a racial slur, really, And they were like, oh no, you just, you've got 3 cultures in you. You're obviously Western, like Australian, and then you're Chinese and you're Vietnamese. That's pretty cool. Like, that's so good because you speak different languages, but then you still like are really modern or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's...
And that was like the first time you heard it? Like
first time. And then I meet other people. I meet people who are Pakistani, born in, migrated to Thailand, but was educated at like an international high school, went off to university in the US and came back. Or like French Thai people who like, grew up in France, educated in the States, whatever, right? And everybody was like a melting pot, like an amalgamation of something else. And so they were all third culture children. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I'm the same as them, And
it's funny because like when people ask me, what nationality is you, like there was a point of time where and still to this day, I actually don't even know what to say, what the answer is. So now I'm just going to go third culture.
Third culture.
It's a really, it's like we're all, I don't know about you guys, but like I felt like I was going through an identity crisis because you were born here. We don't know anywhere else. Like China, Vietnam, like it's not our home. Like we don't identify with that.
I'm Chinese, but I speak and my parents born in Vietnam, but I speak Chinese, but I can't really speak Chinese. Like it's
and
so
you grow
weird.
up, and you grow up in Australia, and you can't really speak
Western.
English either. No, I'm kidding.
It's true. And
No wonder you're confused.
No, I'm super confused, and sometimes like I have to explain to him, like hey, my mom and dad are born in Vietnam, but they're Chinese. I don't speak Vietnamese, and all that stuff like that. I have to explain that to him, and then now it's just like, we're third culture. We've got three cultures in us.
But how cool is that? Like here, you don't think about it too much. You just grow up here and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. Like sometimes you feel like it might be a disadvantage in some sort of ways. When they look at your name, they're like, what? You have an English name, but in the middle, it's like an Asian name. And it's like, but I felt over in Bangkok, and I think large part of Asia, that like, it's really like valued. Yeah. Because, who knew speaking Chinese would be such an advantage in those parts of the world, like even here now. And also I think being Asian, living in Bangkok, it helps that you look like one of them. So naturally they like help you out more. They're much kinder to you. They want to engage with you because it feels safe.
It's like one with the people.
Yeah. But then like you're also one with the foreigners as well. And it's like,
You're like this conduit, right? Like
and like not all expats are in that kind of position. So I felt like, oh, I really belong here. And that's probably why I stayed for so long and continue to stay, because I'm like, oh, I feel like I found my home here. I feel seen here.
Okay, so question. Does Bangkok feel more like home, or does Sydney feel more like home now?
It's weird being back. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember all these things, it feels really homey. But then like going back, I'm sure when I arrive back, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a place here. There's a community here that I interact with, the locals here. And I'm like, oh, this feels like home too. So I guess that expression, home is where the heart is.
This episode is produced and brought to you by Social Wave. Social Wave is a strategic content marketing agency helping businesses grow revenue using video, podcasts, and SEO. Head on over to socialwave.com.au to find out more. Now back to the show. How do you navigate the feeling of like being physically rooted somewhere, you're in Bangkok, but you're almost like floating across the different spaces? How does that feel?
Oh, good question. It feels liberating because a part of you wants to belong somewhere that's natural. It's really tribal of us, right? But then at the same time, it feels great not belonging. I'm like a speck, like, here a population of 26 million. Bangkok alone is 15, 16 million. I'm like a speck. And I like that feeling. I like being the small fish in that kind of context, because you just feel like, free to do whatever you want, be whoever you want, without these frameworks, without these cultures and expectations, right? You're just uninhibited. And I feel like who I am there is different to who I am here. And that's also
like
really
you've got a different persona, or you got like a...
Not a different persona, it's like a feeling.
Okay.
Like I feel more independent there. I feel more within myself there. Whereas when I'm here, I'm someone's daughter. I'm someone's sister. I'm a teacher to these students in the community that I grew up in. Like, so I've got these different identities that I'm wearing. We all do, right? But when I'm over there, I'm like, I don't have to wear no identity. I wear I'm just bare. And that is so freeing.
Do you feel physically rooted there, or do you still feel like you're floating?
I still feel like I'm floating.
And do you like that? Do you prefer that feeling? Have you always grown up like that?
No, I've always grown up really assured, knowing where I'm going, what I'm doing. Like I've always been like really kind of rooted in that way. But I've just become comfortable and okay with
So
not knowing
interesting. Yeah.
and floating. And I never thought I'd be
scares
like
people,
that.
though.
Yeah, exactly. But it, you know, I don't know, you've known me, like I feel like I'm really a control freak. I like to be in control of the things I do, know what I'm doing and how I show up. And I guess in relation to that, like that sense of floatingness or unknown, I had to learn to be comfortable with that. And that took a lot of healing because at the back of my head for the first year that I moved to Bangkok, I was like, are my parents disappointed in me? Am I being selfish for doing what I want?
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, like, for me, I can't even believe like that I would ever do that. Like, I would freak the hell out that, look, I got so many responsibilities here. Like, if I left and traveled, I'd feel like I am not helping my parents and I'm escaping, running away. Yeah. So, like, for me, like, just so everyone knows, like, I had a older brother that traveled overseas, and he went on and traveled. But before, when I was young, like, he would look after the family and do all that stuff like that. And then I kind of realized what was going on. And then I realized, and I said, "Don't go travel," which is my older brother. And I said, "Go travel. You do your thing. I'll take care of the family. I'll do what I need to do." So then I felt like for me to travel right now and do what I need to do, I feel like I'm like kind of like escaping and running away. That's how I feel. So how the hell did you break that?
Ooh,
Yeah.
That gives me chills because
Yeah.
I for a long time I felt like I was running away. I was running away from my parents.
Yeah.
I was running away from the difficulties or the hardships that comes with building foundations and security. I was running away from like this go kind of world that we live in, right? And I felt like a bit of a coward for running away in some sort of ways, right? And I felt a lot of guilt as well because that comes with it. But then I had to do a lot of deep work, and I was like, yo, but like your body knows what's for you and what's not for you. And if you are here, like, you know, back in Sydney or whatever, doing that, you're not being the best version of yourself, and then you're useless to everybody around you. If you're not living to your full potential, loving yourself, loving what you do, and contributing in your own way, however you see it, to the world, then to me personally, I'm like, what's the point? That's kind of a bit lifeless.
Yeah, I get that. Because I had a friend, she went through a lot of depression after a major breakup, and then I just told her, you need to just get the hell away from you. And then when, you know, she traveled, she came back, I just felt like, holy crap, like, you're a different person. Like, you know, you've learned.
Yeah, travel does that too. Doesn't it?
Yeah. And you just sometimes need to get out, like, and just like find yourself. And yeah.
But I felt that way, like, to a certain degree. Like, traveling felt like I was running away. Not that I had any problems, but it was sort of like I'm literally putting myself on pause. I'm delaying the inevitable. Like, I'm gonna have to come back and do what it is.
You're gonna have to come back, get married, have kids, buy a house.
Yep.
Yeah, look after the family.
like what? We're like 33, 34 now, and like the parents are now expecting like kids and like marriage and stuff like that, right? And so I think it's like the narrative we play in our heads again. Like, we play these beliefs, these isms, and it's like you said, it's like your parents never actually at any stage really verbalized that they expected anything. Like, they probably did, but they never actually said anything either. And it's like, I think we play the story in our head.
Did you ever have the conversation with them?
Yes and no. Like, I have to go back and think of it. But like, what I grounded down most in, like, to kind of like counteract all these feelings of guilt, is that at the end of the day, my parents want me to be happy. I know that about them. And then so I have to do that. That was a service. That was like the payback. Like, I'm going to pursue what makes me happy because that's what you ultimately want. Like, I don't think parents are like, oh, they need to do that for me. You know, if we think that way, I think then that like we're kind of doing a disservice to who our parents are.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I've just got to pursue me, do me, what makes me happy, and hopefully that will kind of ooze out into my aura. They will feel that and they will recognize that, and then they will understand that way. But yeah, it's the certain times when I had conversations with my mom and I was like, Mom, like, I'm a female. Why is it that I need to get married to be me, to validate who I am? That's not
It's not my purpose.
No. My purpose is to lead in a way for the younger generations, for my students, for myself, for my younger sisters, like cousins and stuff like that, to show them that there's a different pathway, you know, and that's empowering, you know, and not like, I feel like I just have, for lack of a better term, you just need the balls to do that. And I felt like, well, you've given me all these skill sets, these advantages, you know, knowing all these different languages and having all this like determination and motivation. I better put it to use, you know, in a constructive way, in the way that I see will like benefit. You know, I don't think it'll be beneficial if I stayed with a house and like, I'll just be like depressed, I think.
Going through the motions.
Yeah. And then they'll just have to put up with me moping around, being like sad and stressed out. And I'm like, that's not the way they want to see me. They want to see me thrive. They want to see me like interact, engage, use my language skills that they gave me and really like, you know, take it. I said to my dad one time, I was like, you know, I don't want to stay here. People grow up here and they stay here and they don't go anywhere. Like, you didn't work that hard so I can just stay here. Like, you did it so I can have all these opportunities. And I'm like going way past this opportunity thing and like just really, you know.
How do you reply?
He was like, yeah, I mean, you're old now, so you do what you need. And
You're old now.
like, you're mature enough now to make these decisions for yourself. And it's scary for them.
Yeah,
You know, I'm the only girl, you know, and the world's
You're the only girl.
I'm the eldest.
Oh, eldest, yeah.
And I've got 2 younger brothers. And I also thought, I was like, how am I going to show my brothers that pursuing, I'm going to get emotional, but like pursuing your purpose and your dreams is how we should live this life. Like, if I stuck and stayed small, I wouldn't want that for them. So I just got to like lead by example. So yeah.
Actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah,
Like, I think,
exactly.
Because there's a lot of just hot air, like there's a lot of talk out there. And, you know, we sort of see it. It's like, particularly in the community that we grew up in, like particularly Southwest Sydney, they're like people are in a bubble here, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think like the idea of like, what's the top life here is like live for the weekend, right? And there's no bigger pursuit in terms of like what it is they do. But then there's a lot of just talk is cheap. It's like you can tell people this sort of stuff, but you actually got to do it.
No, but like what Jen said, like it resonates a lot to me because like I've seen so many friends that I just look at them and I just go like, you're not happy here at all. And you should just go do what you want to do.
Yep.
And like for me, for some weird freaking reason, helping my family was what I wanted to do. But I know for a lot of people out there, that's not like makes them, you know, click and what's not. Well,
That's a self-awareness thing, right?
And for me, it just makes me so happy. Like for some weird reason, I just feel so happy about it. But so when I do stuff for my parents, do stuff for my brothers and my, you know, my missus and my partners, it makes me feel really great. But for other people, it just makes them feel miserable. So they just need to go out there and just do what's best for them. And I think like, I see that side of them and I just feel like heartbroken that they can't do it. And I just like, and that's why I said to my friend, just get the fuck out of here. Just do it now. And I was just like trying to tell every single person in the circle of friends, tell this person to get out of here. Like, get out of here now. Yeah, because I could just see it. It was just, that was just breaking inside.
Let it be free kind of thing. Yeah.
It means a lot that I can like, you know, see that. So that's why I say it's like very inspirational and a lot of people don't see that, and yourself, you probably don't even see that yourself. But for a lot of people out there, it's inspiring, and it's inspiring for your brothers, I'm sure. That,
it's also permission, right? So like a lot of people feel like they're not allowed to do this. Like it's a bad thing by doing this. So then the fact that you're doing or like we're doing it and like other people are treading that path, you kind of go to them and you're like, all right, this person looks like me. They grew up in the same environment as me. This is what I also want to do. And because they managed to do it, I feel like it's okay for me to do it as well. It's
so important to set that example as well. But also going off of that, like you seem like you've talked about being such an advocate for other Asian females and other, because we're always put in this box as well. And like through your teaching, do you share this message a lot with your students as well?
For sure. So that year I came back in 2017 and I was back in the classroom, and like it's the most exhilarating thing when you start off a unit of works. Like, so I was a history teacher, and you start off like a unit of work with a picture of you in that space. So one time I was teaching the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Wow.
And there was a picture of me going like this with my friends being silly right in the middle of the square.
Yeah.
And I was like, so you guys, this year I went here and I was like giving them context and like China's like this, da 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 da. And that was my segue into the lesson. And then I connected everything to that, right? And I think for my students, they were like, oh, wow, she's actually gone there. That's so cool. Like, and then they will inquire like, oh, where did you get those stickers from your laptop from? Yeah. And then I go through this narrative and I'm like, oh, I got it from here. This is where I went and this is what I did and this is what the sticker means. Or like, I remember my first lesson back after having such a hiatus, and I was covering a class and they were learning about permaculture. They had to design a permaculture garden in a backyard for like a geography lesson. Yeah. And I'd spent like the better half of a year volunteering on permaculture farms in Central America.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my God, I feel so aligned and synchronistic because it was really ethereal. I was like, this is my first day back and I've got all this knowledge from like all this time I spent in like Wayward, Costa Rica in the middle of nowhere doing all this work. And I was able to be like, okay, you shouldn't put that there because there's a landing here and la la la. And so integrating all of these experiences into what I do, like my passion, education, is like really cool. And for the students to turn around and be like, oh, miss, I just want to be exactly like you.
Yeah.
And actually sitting here across from you, Vivian, you remind me so much of a student that I had. Seriously, like when I saw your photos,
she was like, a terrible student.
Right. So she found me on Instagram and she was like, oh my God, do you remember me, miss? And I was like, yeah, of course, la la la. And I explained how we met. I'm like, so what are you doing with yourself? What are you studying? And she's like, oh, I'm studying teaching. And I just want to let you know that like you inspired me so much. Oh, sure. And I just thought you were so cool. And I'm like, are you sure you want to get into teaching? have you been watching the media? Did you not see how stressed out we were? And she's like, yeah, but you just made it look so fun and so cool. So now I'm a primary school teacher. And I was like, I could die happy because of that. And that was like an integration of everything. And I was like, and, that was one out of, X many girls that I taught, and they were all like a little bit like that. So, yeah.
It's like super rewarding, hey? Like when you can like influence people, like impact people in a really good way.
Yeah.
So Davey's dream is probably like someone to come up to him and be like, I always want to be an accountant like you.
Yeah, I don't think that never happens. No one wants to be an accountant.
Hey, but you never know. Maybe there is someone out there who wants to be a dream accountant.
No,
but
there are people that want to be an accountant.
The point is, it doesn't matter.
Davey doesn't even want to be an accountant.
There's two people who don't want to be an accountant, please.
You're doing a very valuable job.
Yeah.
Hey, you're doing society service.
Who else is going to do our taxes, Yeah.
But I think it doesn't matter. It's like a self-awareness game. It's like, hey, you got to know what it is you want to do. Go after it and feel like it's okay and not feel bad about it. Because like most people, the last bit is like you feel bad about it because if it doesn't follow the pathway that you're expected to do, people like, especially in our society with Asians, it's like they feel terrible about it. And then they get this really like conflicted issue where they sort of are grappling. And then like you have obviously your friend who had that. I see friends like that as well. I've had friends who do like careers for like 10 plus years and then like drop it. And then all of a sudden decide that they want to go out and do their own thing, which is like fantastic. But I feel like more people aren't doing it. And then they get to like 60, 70 retirement age and they're like, what the hell did I do with my life?
It's not even there. They don't even get to that point. They just either get to some point where they gamble their life away or take drugs their life away. I've seen that stuff happen all the time where they just get...
They find outlets, right?
Yeah. They get lost and depressed and they just find some sort of outlet to get away from their life. And
without dealing with it.
Yeah. And it's sad. Like, by that time, it's so hard to get them out of it. Like, so the best way to get them out of it is to tell them to get the fuck out of here. Like, yeah. And it's crazy how like I see some people that just stuck with their whole life and they just hated all the stigma about being here and looking after the family and taking care of the family. And these guys are A+ students. I'm talking about when I was young, they were killing it in school.
Because that's all you know when you're younger as well. And then you're fit into this mold and you're taught to, if you do something well, you get the good grades, everyone's going to be like, wow, you're doing amazing. And then when you get out of that, it's like, you can't keep doing exams for the rest of your life. You can't keep getting that feedback. And then what do you do with your life? You have no sense of path or no sense of purpose after that. It's all the 99.95 kids as well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, I always think about like high achieving students in general to like people in Japan. Japan has like all these weird subcultures, and because they're just really, really not oppressed, but they're like, they all have to fit in a box. And so like all these weird deviants come out. That's why there's all this like weird stuff that Japan comes up with in a really kind of cool way. And I feel like it's like the same with like high achieving students. They're like, everything is like pushed down because all they need to focus on is the study.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to the founders of I Can Study, where they sort of talk about the same problem about education right now. It's like, they're just going in this blind. They don't even know why they need to learn this. They don't know what the point is. They just need to know that they need to do it. And it's like such a problem in education right now. And in particularly Asians, because Asians put such a value on education and not enough on self-exploration or what you want to do. It's like a real problem. And I thought maybe like our generation, like we sort of have crossed that and we sort of understand that. But it's weird, like talking to these guys, they're saying, no. Like there are parents who are our age who are teaching the exact same thing to these kids that they didn't enjoy being pushed to do. And it's like weird. It's like, why the hell would you do that? I don't get it. But I don't know what your thoughts are, because you're a school teacher. But it's like, I thought the sort of generation jump, for the next one would help with this
The
situation.
cycle never breaks unless you break it yourself. And I guess they don't know what they don't know.
Or maybe they haven't broken it. They still like, they're just still stuck with it. Like, grow up, have kids, and like, get a good education and do the whole thing that they need to do. And that's like society for them. Like that's like a happy life for them, which to be honest, like they may be happy.
Well, it's a self-awareness thing again.
Yeah.
It's like if that's you, that you want to do that, then you do you.
Yeah.
You want to YOLO out in life, like you do that. Like that's the thing. But there's a lot of people who want to YOLO but do the other thing. So
and
it's like that's the problem.
Really depressed. Yeah.
But
So
what
do
are
you
your thoughts?
have that experience with your students? How the parents are the same?
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the schools I've taught at. It's also a systematic thing. Like if you think about our society in general, like it kind of breeds that kind of thing, right? Where you need to have an education in order to succeed, to make money, to be able to participate in this society effectively, to live, right? And so it perpetuates that. So if you don't place like importance on education and push that, then you're going to really struggle after you leave. So there's that aspect of it. And then there are conservative parents who are like, just do it because all the other things you can do after you finish school. Like you'll get there, but you need to like get the good marks to get your foot in that door in order to be able to achieve that sense of freedom or do what you want kind of thing. But I also feel like there's not, like we're not normalizing it enough, like we don't make it like accessible for our younger generation to think this way, to feel this way, to have this kind of impact. And there's no one really paving that way for them or modeling that for them. I remember when I was in school, there was a lot of like women's kind of leadership stuff, like, this camp, the leadership camp that we went on, and other things as well that was like offered by like these companies or businesses that wanted to create this kind of momentum for everyone. And so I don't know if that's even in schools nowadays for them to have that, to see that it's a possibility. So
what about the Bangkok system, like in terms of like the Thai education system? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm laughing because maybe I'm not allowed to comment on it. It's I don't want to
Jen does
offend.
not have a job going back to Bangkok after this.
I don't want to offend it. No, it's definitely different. It's really collectivist. Like we're here, we're very individualistic.
Yeah.
We're very like private. Like your success is hinged on how much effort you put in, right? Whereas Thai society in general, the education system, like many other Asian countries, communal, collectivist, and it's for the greater good of everyone, right?
At the sacrifice of the individual sometimes.
Absolutely. Like individualism is not that it's frowned upon, but it's not celebrated. In fact, like, what I found really disparaging was, if you go to a state school, you had to have a military haircut. The boys. The girls had to have a bob haircut. You sing the anthem, you say the school prayer, like you have to fall in line. You even sit in order, like you're number 1, 2, 3, 4, and you sit in order. And I think that's really like, just really organized.
You can't dream of that here, eh? Like it's...
Oh, never. Like so you can't do that. You can't put me down to a number here. You know what I mean? You are you. You get to sit wherever you want in the classroom. So it's really different like that. And I think experiencing the contrast, just adds more flavor to you know, just the more you know, basically. So it's really interesting.
I wonder what the schooling is like, especially if teachers like you come from overseas and you bring all these experiences. Like, does that change the dynamic of the school and how individualistic the students are as well?
Definitely. Like the school has to be open to that. But a lot of parents, like, especially I think modern Thai parents who have been educated outside and want better opportunities for their children, they recognize that this foreign way or this outside, the Western way is very helpful. You know, it helps my child stand out. It gives them a particular skill set. It allows for individual thinking. That's the most important thing, like, or oppositional thinking. And so, I think that plays into mind when they're choosing the school or like the teachers for their children. Like, they're like, okay, it's something different from what they've grown up with or the society in which we live in. So, yeah.
Are you at specific schools or like, I guess, like non-traditional thinking? Are these schools specific to, you know, like how we have selective schools here? Is it very different and segregated, or is it just kind of a mix of anyone can come in and teach?
Well, it depends on what type of school you go to. Like here, you've got international schools, you've got private schools, you've got state schools, you've got selective schools as well. So it depends on what type of context in which you teach in. I teach in like an independent school, like a private Catholic independent school, for a specific market, like a specific part of the Thai community, like very affluent, able to afford these things.
Open-minded,
very open-minded parents and very like, you know, everything's really accessible, well-funded and resourced. And so like that's a totally different kettle of fish to what the other younger Thai children or the greater Thai society might be experiencing as well. So I always see it as like a snapshot. I get to participate in this part of Thai society, and these children that I teach will end up, you know, in very like successful places and contribute to their community in their own way because their parents have given them the opportunity for that.
Makes sense. I kind of want to change this, if you don't mind. I want to ask a real quick question about so if I put myself in a lot of other people's shoes that want to travel and want to kind of like see the world, a big question they always ask is like, do I have the money? Like, you know, like, can I afford this, or I'm gonna run dry?
Yep.
So like, how do you and yourself like combat that problem? Like, is that a problem in first place?
You want to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. So I've worked here. I saved money. I've been really smart with my money as well. And my parents are super supportive as well in that aspect. You know, the bank of mum and dad. I'm saying that because I saw that on the news today and I was like, do I have that? But also,
it's insane.
But also, I was really smart with my money because I was like, look, I can put this into a mortgage or into a deposit, or I can just save all of my pennies and then go all out, right? And that's exactly what I did. I saved my pennies for the first 3 or 4 years and I'm like, okay, I'm going to run now. And then when I was like, okay, now the funds are not low, but there's no, you know, you got to be smart. Like there's not a safety net. I've spent past my quota, right? I'm going to get a job and that job's well paying. And then like, so you save and then you keep going. And so like you save and then you travel and then you save and then you travel.
So how much is that? If you guys don't mind.
Of course, such an accountant. You try to manage my books or something. Like, what's going on here?
I'm curious on the number that you need to travel the world. Like,
I don't know. I've never like thought about counting how much I needed in order to do something. I just was like, okay, I'm going to go. And then when I feel uncomfortable with what I have in the bank account, I'm going to go and find work and to top it up.
Not like that.
I've never gone on zero. I've never gone like below, like past a threshold. I always make sure that is the base. And if you hit that base or come anything close within that range, you got to be responsible. And I think that's how I've maintained it. I was just really financially responsible with how I go about it. Yeah.
So is it hard to do that, or is it easy, or?
Well, I was able to work and live abroad, right? But like if you're in a specific field where you can't, like you know, teaching, you can teach, you know, so you can do that from any country, right? But there are certain professions that like, you can't just do overseas. You can't be a real estate agent in any country that you want, right? So you got to think about how, and that's why I'm like, teaching is so great because it allows me to be in so many different places. So yeah, I think that's a huge factor.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's like based on your education and what career you choose.
Well, I think it's preparation. Yeah. So, for example, I worked in corporate hotels for 10 years. I can't go to a hotel. Well, actually, I can go to a hotel and work at a hotel, but you can't always get a work visa in another country to work, right? So I can't just run a remote hotel. There's no such thing. So when I was thinking about this at the time, like I probably kid you not, this was probably like a 7-year master plan. Like I'm completely different to Jen. I was like 21, 22, and I was like, I'm going to go travel the world. And I didn't do it until I hit 29.
Whoa.
And partly because of that, it's not because I just was like, it took me 8 years to save up. I'm terrible with money. Maybe there was some of that. But it was like life gets in the way. Things happen. And I just didn't have the circumstances to do it. But when I finally could do it, I was ready. And so I remember, and I'm a very sort of solution-based person. And I remember at the time, and this was like, 2009, 2010, when I really I was like, yep, I'm going to go travel. There were no like YouTubers. There was no like social media influencers, right? The only people out there that were doing something like this were travel bloggers. And so these travel bloggers were actually doing these like trip reports, and they actually would break down how much they would spend. And they would actually be like, all right, I'm in Thailand, my average daily spend, and this is a breakdown. You would love it as an accountant. It'd be like a spreadsheet of just like this complete breakdown. And it was like, oh, it was only costing me like $25 a day. And I was like, $25 a day. I was like, this would be like a meal, in Australia. That's lunch done. So that was the first time where I was like, okay, this is very possible. And then I started to just work backwards going, right, if I wanted to travel a year and I wanted to go to these countries and this was the average daily spend, how much would I need? And so I just methodically worked backwards to figure out what that was. And then I moved into things like travel hacking. I was like, all right, I have frequent flyer points. How can I fly, with points, and how could I save money? And so it was this whole subculture. And so then it was just a very normalized thing, because we talk about normalization. It was just like, because I was consuming all this stuff for such a long period of time, by the time I was going to go travel, it was easy. Like I never feared about money.
Yeah.
Like money was never an issue. And then anything else was a bonus on top. If I made money along the way, then great. So I think in total, when I traveled for a full year, between myself and Iris, my partner, we probably spent only about $35,000 to $40,000 for the entire year between the two of us. And we never skimped.
And that's like 1 year's worth of savings.
That's an entire year of travel.
Wow.
And it's not like in the cheapest of the cheap. Like I wasn't in the Amazon jungle in Brazil. I was like in Europe, in the Middle East, and I did Asia as well.
Holy shit.
Right?
Is that including the time where you like got into a bit of issues and lost a lot of stuff?
Like, I mean, of course you should get insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, had that happened, I didn't have insurance, I would have been screwed.
Yeah.
But like, I was in London. I spent time in Barcelona, and then I did like Asia, and I did like the Middle East and stuff. And yeah, I'd say our average spend was probably like $50 to $60 a day.
Between the two of you guys, right?
Between the two of us.
Pretty impressive.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't stay in many hotels, actually. I wasn't a hotel
I didn't stay in a
person.
single hotel.
Yeah, I was like in a hostel, and I lived out of a backpack, and was like trying to find, okay, I don't want to be in a really dingy hostel, but I don't want to be paying a lot of money. I kind of want to go in the middle, and then like eating hostel food, cooking my own food. Like I was carrying, when I was in Central America, like carrying like a small portion of rice, some fresh fruit, like in my traveling backpack, and like eating that way rather than paying like for food and stuff like that. So you can travel on budget and have like an amazing experience. Yeah.
It's definitely a hurdle, particularly I feel like amongst, talking to even Asian friends. They were like, how much does it cost? It's like the first question.
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
It's expensive. How much does it cost? Which is a good point that you raised, right? And I think like for Jen and I, maybe it's just not a thing that we really sort of focus on, but it is something that people fixate on. It is cheaper than you think.
And if you want it bad enough, you'll make it work as well.
Exactly. It's a priority.
Exactly.
And that goes back to things like, well, if you're living for the weekend, then, if you're blowing all your money across, at the bar on a Saturday night, then you don't really want this badly enough, to do that.
100%.
So I did say I probably sacrificed a fair bit, leading into saving, but it was worth it. So
Yeah. But you guys, like, I know for sure, like you were paying for rent at that time and you were still saving up for it and you're doing fine. So
Yep.
it's
Well, I didn't have a crazy, well-paid job. Like I wasn't like an investment banker, but you make it a priority, you sort of make it work. So I think like with Jen, it was, you just had a rule, like if you had a baseline, you stick to that. for me, it was just mainly, it was similar actually. Once we started traveling, it was like, all right, if we hit this number here, then we should probably try and do something about it. But you have to save and you have to make it a priority.
And I think I'm like, I don't have to support anybody. Like some people have families and they want to travel as well, or like they have mortgages and stuff like that. I don't have any of those responsibilities. So it's a lot cheaper and easier to save when it's just you are the sole person that you're looking after.
That's true.
You know? So yeah, I understand that, like, you know, there are a lot of people out there who want, you know, to experience this, but I think it's really hard when you're in Sydney also, when you're like, you know, going out to dinner with friends or like just paying for the groceries, petrol, whatever. Makes it like so impossible to save a good chunk of money and then be able to do this for yourself. You know, so even if you want to do so bad, like the system or the structures don't allow you to do that. Yeah.
Are you saying like your parents, like you didn't feel like you were obliged to give them anything or pay them or, you know, make money for them or anything like that?
Yeah, that's the best thing about my parents. I hope they watch this. They're super supportive. You know, they're like, they never asked anything of me, right? And so in that way, I'm really grateful and fortunate to be able to not have that, like yourself, you know, like these responsibilities. So, but in turn, you get to pay your parents back in a way that's like...
Yeah, for me, like I don't see it as a disadvantage.
Yeah, no. I think that's so admirable.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that, but I'm like on the opposite end where I'm like, oh no, I'm going to live my best life.
Well, I'm living my best life.
Yeah. So it's really different. And I had to like... kind of resolve that within myself and be like, no, it's okay. You're not responsible for that as well. You got to be okay with that.
Did you
like,
have that conversation with your parents?
No, my parents kind of had that conversation with me. They're like, we're okay, we're good.
Oh,
Like,
so they initiated the chat. Like,
well,
sorry, it's like they entered
I don't know
the chat,
how
but
it came
Yeah.
about, but like there was like a conversation where it's like, you know, we're okay. And I was checking with them. They're like, you know, we don't need anything from you guys, like my brothers included, you know, you guys do you're old enough and like we trust you in your decision making process. And I'm sure all parents feel this way, you know, with their children as well. But it's like, we don't know until we have that chat with them. And I think having just that step of having that chat is like the hardest
Well, that's the problem.
thing.
Most people don't have that chat.
Because we make so many assumptions about like, oh, they want this from us. They think this and these expectations. Like we just make
And the parents
these
don't
stories up.
initiate, but then the kid is like, oh, I don't want to talk about this sort of... It's just, there's a massive
that's me.
communication problem, right?
Yeah, because I'm the eldest daughter and I have two younger siblings. And the responsibility for me is that I'm going to provide for them because my dad's getting older and I'll be the financial like supporter. And that's why I was asking, like, how did you break away from that? Because I know my dad has that expectation on me, but I think my mum wants, like, she's retired. I think she's going to go off to a Buddhist temple and become a monk.
Oh, I love that.
That's her dream.
I love that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So she's very free, but my dad's very rooted. So like how did you break away from that expectation or that expectation upon yourself?
Sometimes I have guilt, like I said earlier, about that. But also, you know, I'm of this opinion that we are all on our own journeys. Like, you know, take out like this reality aside. I like talking about life philosophy. My idea is that like we are all on our individual paths. You know, we're not responsible for anyone but ourselves in this lifetime. And if you look at that as a bigger picture kind of thing, like your soul's purpose here is to serve you, to learn the lessons that you need to learn. So if you get caught up in this thinking of, and I still get stuck in this sometimes, to be honest with you, but like, oh, I need to do this for them. I need to do this for my siblings. I need to do this for that. And so you neglect yourself, and then you don't get to elevate. You don't get to level up within yourself, and then your soul becomes stuck at that point. And then, you know, this might be going a bit over the top, but like you will reincarnate or come into the next lifetime having to still learn this same lesson if you don't break free from that, right? And then you're in the same cycle again. So I'm just like, well, it's challenging. Well, the hard things in life are made to be broken so that you can
live your best life.
Yeah, reborn, resurrect, and like grow, right? So yeah, but sometimes I still get caught in that kind of thinking, but I always have to ground and remind myself, no, we're all here for ourselves. We're on our own journey. That's their journey. How they feel about it, how they perceive it, nothing to do.
It's not your responsibility.
Yeah. And I know it sounds really selfish when like you take all the stories away. Like you just been like, no, but that.
I don't think it is. Like,
Yeah.
the weirdest thing about this is like this, like I remember this now that you say this, is that I had a really, really heated argument with my brothers, massive argument. And I said to him, you know, you don't do, you're not the one that's working his butt, like, or I was saying this, you're not the one that's working their butt off for the family. You're not the one that's like, you know, providing. You're not the one that's like, in a nice way. I said it in a very nice way. It's like, you know, I'm working my bloody ass off right now for the family, you know, because we purchased a car for our mum, and it was a mum and dad, and it was the most amazing thing I've done in so long for my parents. And I felt really great, but I also wanted to take my parents to the car dealership, but we couldn't because of COVID. And I was like really adamant that I wanted to take them there. And they said, no, don't do it because of COVID. And I got really angry, and they were like, what the heck are you getting angry for? Like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, and then I just had this guilt, like all this pressure. And then they were like, Davey, slow the hell down. Like, don't worry about us. Like, we don't want you being like this. Like, we don't, like, we just want the best for you. And then I just sat down and I was just like, crap. Like, I'm just letting all this pressure get to me.
Yeah.
And
you're putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah. This is not for me. This is not what they want from me. And like, my parents wouldn't want this car if, you know, that it's making me feel that way. And that's like, you know, like when I saw that happen to me, and then I was just like, man, I really don't want this to be what I am. I don't want this to impact everyone around me. So I just really got to slow the hell down.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I don't think I've even told many people about the car purchase. And it's partly because of that incident that I had with my brother. My brother just like, he felt really shitty. Like he felt so bad. And for the next 2 weeks, I could hear my brother talking to me every single messaging me, going, how are you going? Are you okay?
Checking in. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like so I resonate with what you said completely. Like, you know, just do yourself. Like, it sounds selfish, but it really isn't, kind of, as well, because
otherwise you're just miserable.
Yeah.
And then you're no good to no one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Some people probably can put on a better poker face than others, but deep down, you're freaking miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
And they usually say that people who have the better poker faces are the most miserable.
Oh, wow.
You know, so do you sort of look at, I know people, and even personally, like, you know, you have like your own bouts of depression and you go through very like dark thoughts. It's like the happiest people actually are the people who are probably in the darkest spots, a lot of them. So like people have to really get a grasp of knowing themselves and like what they want to do, but also like, you know, like what Davey was saying, you sort of you tell these stories, you're like, I have to do this, you know, for example, someone who says, I can never lose weight. Like, you just tell yourself that story, but in actual fact, it's like, if you just shifted the way you think, it's like, it would change completely.
It's all mindset.
It's all mindset. It's a massive problem, because in Asian culture, it is all to do with like certain beliefs and like certain like norms, right? So yeah, I resonate with the same thing, which is like, we have to be very careful and catch ourselves in this case. And unfortunately, this stuff is like very embedded in us since we're kids.
Yep.
So by the time we get to adults, we don't even question it.
You don't know how to
Like,
break it. Yeah.
Yeah, we just literally just take it for truth.
Yeah.
Right. And that's such a problem. It's a whole systematic problem altogether.
Thank you for sharing your story, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't told anybody, but you shared it with us, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, I think for me, like, you have to learn to not take things personally. We take it so personally, like what we think they want, what they're saying to us, how people are reacting to us. And then we put it on ourselves. And it's so heavy, you guys. And the moment you learn to like let go of that and realize, okay, I can't take it personally. I'm being triggered right now. I'm not coming from a place of truth and authenticity within myself. That's when it's like, things get a bit topsy-turvy from there. And then you got to catch yourself. You got to have like super acute sense of self-awareness and be like, whoa. You know, they've touched a wound and I'm reacting or responding in a way that doesn't serve no one.
That's probably why you're so light now. Like, your soul is so light now. Like, you've uprooted yourself, you've healed everything, and then now you can just go explore.
I wish I healed everything. I feel like being back, I'm just
it's
like
a work in progress.
Yeah, work in progress.
Yeah, you always like, funnily you say that, because I think I've like, I've got that down pat, I've got this, I've understood this, I'm aware, and then you find yourself really back in that, or like it shows up in a different way, or something else comes up and you're like, oh, got to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Self-work and like awareness is tough. And some people, like, if you're not in a position or in the mental state or awareness or whatever to be able to approach them, oh man, it's a long road. So
Well, people say people spend a lot of money investing in like wealth, like people who teach me about like coaches in wealth, in career, whatever. But a lot of people also don't value putting money or investing in themselves.
Yeah.
Like from a life perspective, right? Partly because there's life coach industry is completely just crap. Let's be honest here. Like a lot of them there's a lot of life coaches, 21-year-old life coaches out there, like a lot of them out there who just aren't legitimate. But there's also a lot of like great people out there. But I think the point is you have to invest in your own education from a life perspective as well. I think about like Asian girls who are sort of coming through high school, maybe university and that sort of stuff, same position as you were in. And they go, wow, I hear Jen, I want to do what she does. It doesn't matter if it's a teacher. Like I just want to say either travel or I want to experience. What would you say or any advice?
I think we owe it to ourselves as individuals, as women, but on a collective level as women as well, and on like a societal level, on a cultural level, right, to pursue what sets our soul on fire. The moment, not when you deviate from that, but when you're not serving yourself, then you cannot possibly serve your family, those around you and your community, your society, like all these things. You're coming from a different place. And so if you feel that like, there's something that you want to do out there or something excites you and sparks joy in you, like I think go for it. And yeah, like going back to what my friend told me, fortune favors the brave, and the unknown is so scary, you guys. It's so scary. But at the end of that, like you don't know what's going to happen with the unknown, but you know what's going to happen with the known, right? And so I'm always like, I'm curious. Where is that going to take me? So you go down that path. The other one is safe. Like, what to expect, what to
Davey
fall
and
back
I always
on.
say, it's like, it always just works out somehow.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Literally, when shit goes wrong and we both like, if we have a bad day, one of us has a bad day, we just walk into each other's like office or we see each other and we're like, yeah, I had a shit day. And then the next thing the other person says, it always just works out somehow.
You got to
know
trust.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
trust in the
everyone is
process.
like control freak and they want to avoid, they're like, I want to prevent everything. But when shit hits the fan, because it's out of your control, you figure out a way to make it work. And I think that's the biggest problem that people seem to have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you don't trust not just the process, but you don't trust yourself to navigate through the dark times or the challenges.
Yes.
And I think
You underestimate yourself,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when you take the path of unknown or the things that are challenging, having these difficult conversations with ourselves and our family, it elevates you. It changes something within yourself. Like you might not change your external world, but inside of you, you feel different. You see something different, and that has a huge like repercussion on how you feel and like what you radiate into this world. And I think that's really important, like energetically, how you show up. And so all these things kind of contribute to that. You want to make it whole and feel good for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, what's your plan for the next year, future?
Good question for Jen.
Oh my God.
YOLO, man.
YOLO!
No, I have a diary and everything, you guys. I'm really structured. But actually, I've taken an adult gap year. Actually, I say that, but I've taken on full-time study again, like via correspondence, to pursue something that I've always wanted to do, as wanted to study further in an area that I'm interested in. Maybe it'll provide me opportunities, maybe not, but it's definitely it's already taught me lots of new things, right? And I've got a free calendar. I'm going to do some more traveling, discovering, and just do the little things that I've had on my list that I've been too busy to do because I was committed to full-time work for the last 4 years. But just getting the little things, having the time to do that, and then hopefully that'll kind of like redirect my compass. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with that as well, because whatever.
It's crazy.
So
like
cool.
when you say that, I think about like just to sort of wrap it up is I remember listening to Tim Ferriss, and he says people should actually take a mini retirement every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm quitting my job now, bro. I'm just saying, after
You know
this.
what I mean? Like people now shift careers every 4 or 5 years instead of like lifelong careers. And he says you should do a mini gap year and just reassess. And just
I'm
see
a
what happens.
huge advocate, and that's why I'm like telling everybody I'm on an adult gap year, because I'm a huge advocate for that, because within that space, creativity will come about, ideas will come about, shifts and all alignments or whatever, and that will make it exciting. That will make it less mundane, and it's just gonna and trust it. It's gonna lead you somewhere. So
It all works out in the end.
Yeah.
That's it. Exactly.
All right, great. Thanks
for
for
having
coming
me.
on to the podcast.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
for coming. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm quitting my job, man.
I'm all for it.
Fuck it.
Thanks for listening to the Level Asian podcast. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode. And why not share it with friends and family who might enjoy it too? Also, make sure you head over to levelasianpodcast.com to join our email list and to receive the latest updates and get notified when the next episode drops. If you know a great guest we should feature, email us at contact@levelasianpodcast.com or DM us on our socials in the show notes. Catch you on the next episode.